Act 250, Vermont's land use law, is more than 50 years old. It's been a controversial piece of legislation for many years, as it tries to straddle the often competing demands of development versus land conservation. The legislature took a crack at updating and revising the sweeping legislation to reflect modern-day concerns in a bill known as S-234 during this past session. In essence, the proposed legislation would have revised the existing statute to make it easier for towns and cities to obtain incentives under Act 250, while exempting projects in certain municipalities located in so-called development areas. However, the bill was vetoed by Governor Phil Scott last May, who cited concerns that it would impede construction of new and much-needed housing. Backers of the bill argued it struck a balance between protecting forest blocks from being fragmented while easing the pathway for housing development in designated areas. On Thursday, August 11th at 5:30 p.m. at the Arlington Common, a discussion about Act 250 will be held featuring Representative Amy Sheldon of Middlebury, the chairwoman of the House Natural Resources Committee, and Seth Bongartz, a member of the Natural Resources Committee and who was one of the architects of the legislation that eventually became S-234, the legislation vetoed by the governor. They will discuss proposals to reform land use regulations and land conservation, with questions and answers to follow. We had a chance to talk with Representative Bongartz recently about Act 250, about S-234, and where things possibly could be going in the wake of the governor's veto.
The goal was to try to make the Act 250 process be more functional. One of the criticisms right now is that the district commissions are issuing you get different outcomes depending on which commission you happen to be in front of. And part of the reason for that is that there really is no oversight. There's no effective oversight of the Act 250 process. So the district commissions, which are doing a good job and doing hard work and doing a good job, but there's no effective oversight. And the Natural Resources Board exists in name only. So part of what this was trying to do was put together a 5-person professional board to hear Act 250 appeals, and then through that process really help guide the entire process, develop the drip lines with the umbrella so that the results would tend to be more uniform, do some really deep thinking, and as decisions are issued, really have them be decisions that kind of go into a little bit of the arena of policy and carefully setting precedent to help inform the next time something similar comes up. With the old environmental board, you had that happen with a lot of key cases that incidentally 30 years later are still the key cases that are being referred to when decisions are made. And so what's happened now with the process going to the environmental court rather than that what we were calling the environmental review board is it's very removed from the average citizen, by the way. Going to court, somebody sitting in a robe on a bench, very different than being involved in a process with 5 people sitting at a table in a Grange Hall. This was kind of an effort to return Act 250, in part return it to its roots, but in doing so, really begin to develop a system for building expertise within that system and then providing guidance down to the district commission so that you'd really have a more uniform, functional process, which, and I believe deeply, would have benefited everybody. The other argument that I made in that op-ed is that I compared it to the 1960s when we had unregulated development, and especially in ski areas, and a lot of times in southern Vermont, where it was so unregulated that there was like raw sewage running across the ground. I mean, it was really just like, and that's where Act 250 came from. And because of that, we were able to keep Vermont from the resources to simply being exploited in the way that they've been exploited in most other states. And so we still have a pretty good natural resources base in Vermont. But right now the system is rudderless. And what we're going to have over the next, and we're seeing it now, we've begun to see it. We are going to be a climate haven. We already are a climate haven, and that's only going to become more acute as the conditions become worse in other parts of the country. So where we are now is that it's the 1960s again, except this time we have a little bit of a luxury of understanding that it's coming. We're going to have a lot of people moving here, especially because of the availability of the internet, the death of the office culture, or the whatever weakening of the office culture. And we're going to have pressures on the rural landscape that's going to have the potential is huge for sprawl to go on much more rapidly than it has been. And by way of example, and I made this point in the piece, we're losing 15,000 acres a year of forest land to development, and that is sprawl. And 15,000 acres, if you count just the perimeters of the football field, not the end zones, is 14,000 football fields a year of forest land being developed. That's obviously not sustainable. And what we should be doing instead is funneling that, making it much easier, and really doing everything we can to encourage people to develop, especially housing in downtowns. In and around downtowns, walkable cities don't need cars to drive everywhere. There are benefits from that are huge. They make towns more vibrant, and they preserve the countryside. And so all of this goes together, and we were trying to, through all of the pieces, really trying to make it easier, not dictate that housing be developed in and near downtowns, but make it easier to do that, encourage it. Because there are so many advantages for everybody, including the people who would live there, and begin to look harder at the issue of sprawl and development of Vermont's working landscape. And I think, and so I think that the governor's veto of this bill is really tragic, frankly. But as always, there's next year, and we can go back at it. And we learned a few lessons from this round, and we're obviously going to try it again.
Again, the discussion about Act 250 will be held on Thursday, August 11th at 5:30 at the Arlington Common, which is located near the intersection of Route 313 West and Route 7A in Arlington. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.